Right. Back with you for session 5, family systems. This is due to the rains that were caused and also caused some type of pipe break on campus, and we're not able to be on campus for our session. So I wanted to record the lecture and then provide some discussion board activities for you. So session 5 is about engaging family vulnerability from chapter 6, and then restructuring attachment and caregiving responses. So we left off with session 4, just starting to get into the piece of vulnerability, but making sure that we're assessing throughout some level of safety before we can get deeper into some of those things. So our reflective thought is from Alice Walker, who wrote the film Colored Purple. And really that book and film and subsequent musical have been about change. We should learn to accept that change is truly the only thing that's going on always, and learn to ride with it and enjoy it. When it comes to doing the type of work we do, I've heard many people call it change work. And man, it really helps me think about words to come up with to direct the feelings and emotions that people are having, and helping them make some sense out of the constant change that is their emotions, that is the environments that are around them that cause these different things, and search for some sense of stability and meaning within the ever-changing nature of the world as it is. All right. So our topics: reminder of the stages of EFT, vocabulary for sure, 4 goals of EFT therapists in stages 5 and 6, 4 access points in stages 5 and 6. Again, I love these goals and access points. Parenting acceptance, evocative statements and questions, and we're going to get a bit more into those. And then stage 7 and 4, the goals through the restructuring responses, and definitely some access points. And then the EFT Tango reminder. And there'll be some activities with scenarios or other things that I'll try to address throughout. So the major stages of EFT, right? Just a reminder again: stabilization and de-escalation. But in this session, we're on restructuring interactional patterns. And what we're looking forward to is consolidation. Hopefully we'll be back in class by then and be able to connect with one another. So vocabulary: a disowned aspect of self. That was deep. A disowned aspect of self. It's pretty much what it is you think, but to consider that concept even, right? A child's new experience. That's really what we're getting into now, right? I may have disowned a certain aspect of who I am, but now I have this new experience. And maybe in that new experience, I'm accepting some of what I had disowned, right? Attachment-related needs is a big part of this. Empathy conjecture, woo, right? You're not allowed to do that in court, but in therapy, you can have plenty of conjecture. And we're trying to have some empathetic conjecture to help move folks along to this new change experience. Reframing and reflecting upon the experience, right? These evocative statements, and we'll give some more examples of that, but I want you to remember these and begin to kind of memorize some of them even, or practice them with each other and with other folks. Heightening, right? We talked about deepening before, but now we're going to heighten emotional experiences and heighten good experiences as well, right? Validation, again, another important part of this process. Restructuring responses, so we're not getting some of the same negative and painful outcomes. Caregiving response, right? This is a key piece, and the parents block that we'll work on in this area as we're moving through these other stages and steps. So I'm asking you to pause yourself for a second. Make sure your feet are on the floor, your behind is in a seat, or you're feeling the weight of your body. And think about, what is it like to hear your mother say, that at a heart level and say something kind, say something beautiful, say something about your growth and progress. She can see how she has missed seeing you, right? Especially if you haven't seen your mom for a while. There's emotions there. That's the main thing I want you to understand. And if you're doing that with your client, that's pretty powerful as well. So I'll say that again. What is it like to hear your mother say that at a heart level, she can see how she has missed seeing you? All right. I'm giving you time to respond and think through it. Okay. Next slide. 4 goals. Love these goals. First, and this is our goals in steps 5 and 6, reminder to have that attachment lens on. First, a child's unacknowledged attachment-related needs are identified, including the child's view of self and the caregivers. And this is where the relational blocks are explored, because their view of themselves and their caregivers may identify maybe one parent is really connected and another is really blocked, right? We're over or under intensifying or minimizing, but we can begin to look at some of those things. Second, a child's model of self and other, right? The parent are named and redefined in the presence of greater parental availability. More vulnerability is appreciated in this stage and in this goal that we're looking through. Third, the active expression of the parental acceptance, the child's vulnerable expression. There's times where people have learned that any expression that is sad, that is disappointment, that is fear, particularly that is anger, is bad. And there needs to come a point where the parent is able to accept some level of the child's expression to get to the major attachment issue. Fourth, anticipates the ways in which a child's new experiences of vulnerability may trigger the parent's own negative views of the child's themselves. Therefore, you need to work through ongoing returning parental blocks, because as the child changes, the parent has to make adjustments too, and that's hard. So explores the impact by the parent view of their child and view themselves as parents. Again, you have to watch the attachment history. I said that attachment lens, but also what is the history of the attachment for the parent too? How did they attach with their parents? So the child's grandparents. Okay. Next slide here. These access points, right? So we got our goals, now we got our access points. And this is about your interventions. So now I'm kind of looking at, okay, I'm going into it with the goals, but here's what I'm doing actively. Emotions first, assessing the child's underlying emotions associated with relational blocks. So we're monitoring for verbal, nonverbal cues through the child's emotions and the parent's openness. I'm observing, I'm looking through, I'm hearing even like words that aren't necessarily words. Right? A second view of self, working through a child's view of self and view of the parent. There may be reluctance to state it, so therapist uses validation, reflective, and empathetic conjecture to enable you to name and express the impact of the injuries. And as I'm thinking about these two, there was this really good book that I used to use. It's called Alexander's Horrible, Very Good, No Bad Day. Alexander's Horrible, Very Bad, No Good Day. There we go. I think I got it right. It's been a while since I read that book. And I worked with at least elementary school students, but it helped them to access words and even expressions that weren't even, words as it may be, to talk about the feelings that they had about having a bad day and why they may be acting out in this way and that way. Right. Third, acceptance and blocks. Promoting acceptance and revisiting parental blocks, right? So fear, sense of incompetence as a parent. They may freeze, right? They may shame or feel shame and express the shame and pass it on to others. Or they may dismiss the whole thing. Support and validation of the parent in this moment is still key. There's got to be something there that they're doing that's seeking towards the attachment and securing the attachment with their child. Emotions are fourth, and increasing confidence in parental responsiveness. As the parents get better, they're less likely to freeze, they're less likely to shame, dismiss, and they're feeling more competent. The therapist can ally with the parent to increase the caregiver's confidence. Look, you can blame this crazy stuff we're about to try. You can blame it on me, and I'm going to suggest this. Now, I'm acting like the therapist here. I'm going to suggest that you just stay stone-faced, or that you laugh even when it doesn't seem appropriate. You laugh and you at least acknowledge, man, that was a mistake. That's not what we want to do. You want to just freak out, but you're going to laugh, right? You can blame that on me and the child, because the child's going to see that as something new, but we're working on something. But so you see those examples there. I'm trying to partner with the parent here to ally with them. Right. So this is an example here of the therapist stating some things. Your concern for your child has been obvious from the beginning, and the conflicts you have had with their behaviors have gotten the best of you. Parent, I am seeing more clearly now. Things keep getting worse the harder I try to make them better. I hate what this is doing to both of us. The therapist, yes, it has been painful for both of you in different ways. It makes a difference that you can see that, right? You only saw danger ahead for your child in your relationship with them, but now you see them saying, I want to protect my child. That matters. It is not just a danger I see, but this is my child, and I want to be there in a way they need. Sorry for all the typos there, but I'm glad I'm able to read it out loud. You get where I'm coming from. What type of interventions is the therapist using in this regard? So you can take a look at your book in chapter 6 as a guide and or other vocabulary guides. I really want to go back to this one where the therapist says, and the typos kind of messed me up there, but and that's part of the reason why I want to go back. But the other reason is the way that it's stated here is a real key skill. Your concern for your child has been obvious from the beginning. This is an easy one. This is an easy layup, because if they're in the room, that's there. Another way I could state it, even if they are in the room and they're reluctantly there, wow, you came in spite of your reservations about this whole process. There's something here you want out of this process. And my sense, it's got to be frustrating, but yet you're still coming, right? So there's ways to validate parents for being in the space and place and time, right? Prompting parental acceptance requires the parents to shift towards a more accessible and responsive caregiving approach. And these are key pieces that I really thought were important about parental acceptance. Now, as I said, I was a school psychologist for a long time, and these were areas where a lot of my colleagues weren't as clear, because they're quick to jump to blame on the parents, or really weren't quite sure what to do with the parent. But because we see kids all the time as educators, we were real clear on that. And so some of what I was there to do is try to help bridge that gap. And why my research agenda really focused in on parent voice, making connections with parent. And what I found is that empathizing with them, I'm learning more that they have to shift to be more accessible and responsive. Shifting at all is hard. Change is hard. So parental acceptance of a child's vulnerability can lead to new bonds between a parent and the child, right? Accepting the child's vulnerability. And that's scary, because everything that I'm trying to do as a parent, I'm putting on my parent hat now. Here we go. I'm putting on my parent hat. Everything I'm trying to do as a parent to get this child to be responsible and safe. Why are you making me be an observer to their vulnerability? Mm. I could say, I'm strengthening the bond between you so they can have even greater access to what you now know as adult. Mm. Therapist is back. All right. And step 6, the focus is on the parent's block, exploring deeper emotional states that prove resourceful and restoring a more attuned and available caregiving response. Right, we're going to continue to focus in on that parental block. Active responses by attuning to emotional cues. And this is working with the parent and that child. Nobody else's really thing can work. You might have some examples, but what the particular dynamic that is right in front of you in the therapist session, in the couch, in the office, wherever you're at, you're tuning those emotional cues in the moment. This is different when the couples hold mutual accessibility, right? And responsiveness and engagement. This is a different thing. I'm talking about the parent-child dynamic, whether that's an adult child and parent, but there's still a dynamic there. It's a different one when it comes to couples. And again, latter half of the course, we'll be getting into couples. Guilt, shame, insecurity, and other distortions may require individual or conjoint parent-only sessions to work through these issues. Again, going back to our vocabulary from session 4, assessment. You're assessing and then you're evaluating whether or not you need to get into that. But some of those things are, you're seeing a lot of guilt, shame, insecurity, and distorted thinking. Some examples of distorted thinking are catastrophizing. Everything's a disaster. This child did not put away their dishes, therefore they're going to be irresponsible and they can be locked up or won't know how to take care of themselves and be in a bad relationship and be abused. No, the consequences are that ants will come, right? But distortions. And guilt and shame and insecurity can add to those distortions, make them even worse. Right? I said we talk about evocative statements and questions, and we've given some examples of those, but here we go. EFT interventions that prompt emotional experiencing are essential in prompting child and parental awareness. You have to experience the emotion, and sometimes you have to bring up painful things, especially if you're trauma informed, they're related to whatever trauma that brought them in there, or trauma that they're even aware of. Sometimes they're not aware of their trauma, but they're having trauma responses. And sometimes we've got to back up and talk about what those trauma responses are. Reoccurring nightmares, not being able to sleep, irritability, quick-tempered. Next, evocative interventions can be statements and questions that invite the family member to focus on their emerging experience as greater safety in the therapy process promotes exploration. I don't want to begin evoking and doing evocative things, right? I'm not saying provocative, I'm not trying to provoke, but I am bringing up things that are bringing out vulnerability. We're talking about things that we don't normally talk about. That's one of the places where I like to begin. Hey, we're going to talk about things that, or thing that we don't normally talk about, or for your own safety, we're only going to talk about this thing here in the therapy session each week because it's been so hard in the past and it's led to danger, violence, pain, destruction. So while we bring it up in here, I want to remind you that we're safe. I want to remind you that our goal is these things for you and your child and the family. So now I'm going to bring up the last time there was this huge shouting match. Everyone's safe. Everybody's clear. We're going to talk about the words. Next, we're going to talk about the feelings that you have vocabulary for, but we're also going to talk about your own body and how you felt in that process. Right. Accentuate the experience in the present moment, and intensifies the experiences by heightening, by focusing on attention on the emotion and attachment-related themes and significance. Those attachment-related themes, right? Mom, I want you to see me when I'm doing things. I want you to come to my game. I want you to connect with me. You never see me. Mommy, I just want you to play a game. You're always gone. Right? Let's kind of go deeper in that. That has got to be painful. That has got to be frustrating. Or, man, I almost want to pass out just sitting next to you while you're talking about it. You want to stand up? It seems like you want to stand up. That seems like it's hurtful. Yeah. Mm. All right. So we're going to restructure the attachment and caregiving responses. So you got to clarify any attachment needs. So child's attachment needs are clarified and shared to a responsive caregiver, often followed by a direct statement of the parent's availability or a direct invitation, right? Second, parent's attuned response. An effective response to the child's expressed need. The therapist supports the parent's engagement with impact and clear understanding of the child's needs. Excuse me. Still getting over that cold. So the child's attachment needs are clarified and shared. And they may be shared through the therapist because they spent some time with the child. But I really like for the child, when they're of age and they're developmentally appropriate, for them to be able to state it clearly or to even write it down and begin to have a conversation about what they've written. Now, sometimes if the parents are really struggling attuning to the child, and we've had an individual session, we'll talk about what's a good response here. What's a response that you can live with? What's a response that minimizes the amount of pain, but also meets our attachment need here? And we practice some of those responses. So now when the parent and the child are sitting together, those responses are more congruent. Sometimes we got to work through them in the moment, especially with teenagers. I love working through it in the moment, but every once in a while we got to separate. Third, child's response. The therapist is with the child to receive the parent's response and process the impact. Sometimes all right, mom or dad or parent, cousin, uncle, caregiver, I'm going to ask you to be quiet while we're going to hear and listen to the child. The child may shrink away from this, but sometimes they're up for the challenge. They're like, wow, they're finally listening. Okay, I felt and I appreciate you. And usually this is an opportunity because children are real empathetic. They may come in and just be extremely empathetic to that parent, or at least express some level of understanding that the parent did not know that the child was capable of. But they at least get a better sense of this is the child's thought process around their emotions, around their expressions. Fourth, expanding the positive impacts. Takes a look at the restructuring and enactment with other family members. And it's often an increase in the felt security. Yeah. To see that increased confidence, competence of the parent, as well as the increased communication skills and decrease insecurity and distress of the child, that leads to greater felt security. So these access point of guiding therapist interventions in step 7, and there's part A and B, all right? But first, coherent signaling of an unmet need. In prior steps, the specific attachment is poignantly expressed, right? Balance between support and safety based on age and development. And poignantly expressed, meaning this is expressed in a way that has deep meaning to both the parent and the child. Second, the enactment of parental responsiveness and engagement. The therapist guides using validation, again, evocative responding. Man, that must have been ugly. What do you think? And heightening. Woo, okay, going back to what we've all agreed was an ugly experience. How did you feel? How did you feel in that? And then, like, what were body sensations? What were like some of the even funny moments in that? And what were like the scary moments in that? To help facilitate a deeper, more coherent response. We'll focus on the child's needs and the parental response. Third, the child engages the caregiving response and they work through acceptance of caregiving response, right? The child may respond with mistrust and fear and may need to work through a relational block, especially if the parent don't respond so well. Younger the child, the more I like to coach the parent along. Older the child and the parent, depending on the level of like hostility and safety needs, sometimes I'll let them work through it because this is real time, real access, and we can attune right there in the moment. And you kind of know if you have a customer, before I get into these other things, like you can kind of know if you have a customer who's really engaged and wants to do the work. And you know if you have folks who are like, I'm still cynical about this whole thing. I'm not quite sure if this is going to work. And usually if there's some cynicism, it's usually about insecurity and individually, particularly for the parent, and we got to shore up their competence, right? Fourth, the parent-child relationship. Following the enactment, the therapist explores the impact of the parent and child's emotional encounter, right? And we'll be summarizing, this is some of that summative evaluation that I talked about in one of the vocabulary pieces, right? And we're kind of breaking that down like, okay, what was really good there? What do you think we can work on again? Fifth, expanding the impact. Others are impacted by the effect of the reparative enactment. So all these others are having these concerns, and now they're in the room. Maybe a sibling, maybe aunt, uncle who live there, maybe grandma, grandpa who are living at home and who are part of the caregiving team. Six, the relational blocks. There may be an identification of additional relational block. Unmet family needs may surface while repairing other family distress. It happens when you bring everybody in the room. And sometimes somebody wants to suck away from, somebody's now getting help. And now this other person's like, oh, that's going to take away anything else. Or we're shining light on things. And now we're in the process of change and somebody's trying to stay the same because they're getting benefit off of some negativity that's happening. And now that junk surfaces. All right. If we have now process, vocabulary, understanding to address those things, the family is actually growing and strengthening. But it's a scary time for folks who weren't there for the process of watching that. Again, this EFT tango, particularly when it comes to the moments where the child expresses the vulnerability, right? So I'm mirroring the present process, and I'm maybe even summarizing what has happened before. When the child came in before, they expressed their vulnerability. You got very angry and it didn't go well. We even had to stop the session. But now we bring up these things and we're all able to stay in the same room. And it's just wonderful to watch you and your child work through that. Let's kind of go deeper in that for a moment and deepen our affect or our emotions around that. And that's got to feel good. We were here 3 sessions ago, and now we're here talking about it, and you were able to see your child. We had these engaged encounters. Man, and what do you think the difference was between last time we just simply tried to talk about how the child felt about homework to actually bringing the math book in here today and that math book was here with us and we looked at the math book and we were able to laugh a little bit. What was that like? What do you think the difference was during the week that led to this? Maybe at home or with talking to the teacher? Okay, all right, so we have a new learning here. How can we generalize that? So let's say something new comes up because there's going to be something else. There may be chores, there may be the argument with the sibling. But how can we say, hey, we're on this process and we're doing what we need to do now that we have these new tools, right? Did you see me go through that tango there, right? Remember, you have the assessment, ongoing efforts to assess safety, readiness, as well as provide new perspectives in this dance. Okay. So a daughter, Leslie, has been identified as the hostile and unwelcoming person, and that pressure was on her because she was blamed for the majority of what went wrong with the family. Again, I'm going back to we start working things out and things start getting better. Leslie feels it may be better if she were not in the family. Ooh, that's a heavy pressure situation. So the therapist in stage 1 tracked the family pattern. What could be at least 3 issues with this family pattern, right? Take a look at chapter 6. I would say look into that, but we've really kind of broken down some of these things in relation to withdrawing, right? We're going back to that diagram, 5.1 diagram of the child withdrawing, and also dismissing by the parent, right? Those are a couple things. I'll let you think about the third one. All right, man. This is so much fun. Time is gone. Look out for the discussion boards. We'll have some of these activities on there. Thank you for chiming in. It's always good to be connected with you. Have a great day.